name's Mairo-Ese. I'm Boss, and you're listening to Smooth Breakfast.
With critical focus on the Nigerian economy, we see the bigger picture.
Nigeria-India trade.
Business Express on Smooth 98.1.
Morning, everyone. You're most welcome. Smooth 98.1, love music, love life. I'm Ayo Mairo-Ese. It is time for today's edition of Business Express 981, 6:30 a.m., Monday, 5th July 2021. And I have Rotus with me. Morning, Rotus. How are you today?
Good morning, Ayo. Good morning to all our viewers. I'm good, thank you. Glad to be on another Money Monday.
Excellent. It's a Money Monday and we are going live. We're on YouTube, so go on to youtube.com/smooth981FM Lagos. You can also send your message through our WhatsApp platform. WhatsApp is 0809 444 0981. Today, Rotus, what do we have? What do you have for us today?
So SERAP is, that's the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project. They are suing President Buhari over ways and means. That is the amount of overdrafts that the federal government has received from the Central Bank of Nigeria. So since May of 2015, about $25 billion has been obtained in ways and means. That's overdrafts that have been provided by the CBN to Nigerian government. That's about 9.8 trillion naira. And so an overdraft, if you overdraw on your accounts, we don't really have that here. I mean, there are lines of credit here, but I mean, in the States, for example, during my time there, if you overdrew your account, there was an overdraft where you would get funds to cover that. So the ways and means is supposed to cover temporary deficits. It's in the CBN Act, Section 38, subsection 1 of the CBN Act says that the CBN can extend an overdraft to the federal government to cover a temporary deficit. Section 8, subsection 2, Section 38, subsection 2 of the CBN Act does say that that money has to be repaid. It's got to be repaid, and it's got to be repaid within the financial year that the money is provided. And I think it also says, what else does the section say again? There's a whole number of other requirements, but SERAP is coming from a position of transparency. And what SERAP is saying is that they want President Buhari to explain what the money has been used for, what projects have been used for, because I think Section 38, subsection 3 of the CBN Act says that the funds that are provided by the central bank in form of overdrafts to the federal government have to be spent on capital expenditure and human capital development. So there's a whole number, and then there's the Fiscal Responsibility Act of the country. Actually, no, wait. There's so many subsections. Subsection 1 says that you can extend the money to the government. Subsection 2 says that it must not exceed 5% of the previous year's revenue of the federal government. And then subsection 3 says that it must be paid back within the financial year that the money was provided. So our revenue for 2020 came out to about 3.9 trillion, 3.9 trillion naira. 5% of that is 197 billion naira. But a lot more extended. So SERAP is saying, and by the way, they've named Abubakar Malami, who is the Attorney General of the Federation, Minister of Justice. He's in the suit. Zainab Ahmed, Finance Minister, she's in the suit. Godwin Emefiele, CBN Governor, he's named in the suit as well. So SERAP is saying that, look, transparency will allow Nigerians to hold the federal government to account. It's also going to pay down debt by forcing the federal government to be upfront about what the money has been used for. Yeah. And more transparency. So that's what they are. That's what they are pushing for. And I think it is the Fiscal Responsibility Act of Nigeria that says that what the government borrows has to be used for human capital development and capital expenditure. So that's what SERAP had. I mean, they sued the government over the Twitter ban. Nothing's really. By the way, SERAP tweeted they tweeted the fact that they were suing the federal government. I thought that was interesting. And also, they sued the National Assembly over the amount of cars that they've ordered. I think what was it, 5.4 billion or so last year. That was the National Assembly was going to use on cars. So SERAP has, they've come forward a lot of these lawsuits, whether or not anything materializes or it forces the federal government, because they're really using the Freedom of Information Act here. Yeah. They want President Buhari to tell us, what have you spent the money on, what projects, and the CBN should not extend any further overdrafts to the federal government. Now, in the past, on the central bank's part, bank is the bank. I mean, think of your relationship with your bank, right? If you're running money and you're in an emergency, well, you would theoretically think that you would be able to have access to emergency funds to bridge a deficit between how much you bring in and which is the difference between how much you expend and how much you bring in. So the CBN is saying, look, we are the banker of the country, and we have to come to the country's aid. But SERAP is saying we need to play by the rules. So that's what that law.
So talking about playing by the rules, Rotus, for this overdraft, I don't know what the conditions are. Would the conditions include that they ought to have there ought to have been some sort of authorization or, before going ahead to take on that overdraft, or does the federal government or does the president have his discretion to apply or to use that facility?
No, so there's no, it's governed by the CBN Act. One, the CBN is, there's section 38, subsection 1, you can extend overdraft to the federal government. So it's in the Act. Subsection 2, it can be more than 5% of the previous year's revenue. Subsection 3, that's the section 38 of the CBN Act. You have to pay back within the fiscal year that the money was received, which is going to, that's not going to happen. In fact, what other news came out over the weekend? I believe that our debt service to revenue ratio was 97% for the first quarter of this. So the federal government spent about 1.8 trillion naira on debt. Since we're talking about debt, they spent about 1.8 trillion naira on debt servicing out of 1.84 trillion in revenue for the first 5 months of this year. Think about that. Think about that for a minute. That means that for every 100 naira that Nigeria made between January and May of this year, 97 naira of that 100 went to settle debt, right? So in light of what SERAP is saying here, you can understand, where things are. I think if you look at the budget, what has been allocated for debt servicing is almost as much as capital expenditure.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So that was capital expenditure was like 3.5 trillion naira, and debt servicing is about 3.3 or 3.2. It's massive, and it continues into 2022. So Zainab Ahmed, who again is mentioned in this suit from SERAP, I think it was Thursday or Friday that she presented the medium-term expenditure framework for 2022 through 2024. 900 billion naira has been allocated for subsidies in the next fiscal year. And she had this moment where she was very, very, very honest. She just spoke her mind. She said, Nigeria is being penny wise, pound foolish. We cannot continue this subsidy. It has to go. That 900 billion could go elsewhere. We're subsidizing people who have 3, 4, 5 cars and big houses. So look, Nigeria's debt is what, 32 trillion naira now? I mean, if you add, that's total domestic and foreign and so on. It continues to rise according to the DMO as at December of last year. So there's a lot of focus on the country's debt. Buhari leaves office in less than 2 years. This is no longer his problem after he goes out of office. Whoever comes in, that's their problem.
There's the burden.
And I think for election season is going to get really hot by the beginning of next year. That's all. We should do our job. So every politician we interview or every discussion that we have, about where this country is going in the next administration, our debt has to be front and center, because opportunity cost of that is that you're not being able to use that money for other, again, according to the Fiscal Responsibility Act, human capital development and capital expenditure. Capital expenditure is a new bridge, a new road, power, things that will benefit us. I keep going back to when Ambode, when I used to live in Shangotedo, Lekki, Ambode, when he commissioned that Jubilee Bridge at Ajah, the thing changed my life, man. I mean, before, when I used to drive, there was these nasty roundabouts that would just cause all types of horrible traffic. It would increase my commuting time getting to the island. It would, cause traffic. But when Ambode, the former governor of Lagos State, commissioned that new bridge, which was capital expenditure, it increased my human capital development and for everybody in that area, because it cut down your commuting time. So you didn't have to spend so much time moving around. It was a new bridge, a flyover. Logistics businesses, whatever, if fast moving consumer goods, whatever you want to say, for that area, by reducing traffic congestion, you've increased human capital development. So what SERAP is saying is that, well, rather the Fiscal Responsibility Act, of the Constitution, is saying is that more money needs to go into these types of, the more debts that you are paying or services, the less money you have to build more bridges and so on and so forth. So,
all right. So a few comments on WhatsApp. Ibrahim says, frightening numbers, to be honest. This feels like a ticking time bomb. The problem with removing subsidies is that a lot of people don't trust the government to utilize the money appropriately. Oil is currently over $70. Is anyone asking questions on the impact of that on our foreign reserves? And then Ogeno Choko from AJ says, we have to make our institutions independent and strong, through legislation, so all issues about financial management wouldn't crop up. Frank says, good morning, guys. With the advent of modern monetary theory, should we still be concerned about debt? Isn't this old-fashioned? For the concern should be what those debts are used for, productive venture. Get it? I think that's what, Rotus, you've always talked about that. And I think we've made the difference, we've differentiated between getting debt and what it's used for, being the crux of the matter. So in terms of not being used for revenue, or like you just mentioned again and again, capital for infrastructure that would then impact on human capital development. Tim Phil says, how is it that oil makes up 60% of our income, but less than 10% of GDP? What goes into income but not GDP? That's on one hand. Then, okay, so I want to take a few of them so that you can answer the question by Yinkos. Rotu says, Otunuga, thank God you don't leave us for Shongotendo and scale up. That's good. More grease to your elbow. I was going to just gloss over that so that I'll just let that slide in right there. Okay, so Yinko says that he thinks he would like for you to touch on the PIB. That yes, it didn't happen over the weekend, but it was on Thursday and we had Tech Friday on Friday, so we didn't have an opportunity to speak about it. That it's the disagreement on the components already, especially the 3% for the oil producing communities. We touched on this during Freshly Pressed 901 on Friday. Cheta was here. I think he spoke on that, Cheta and Waji. But MI from Akoka finally says, at the rate the youths of today will be the debtors of tomorrow. Talk about a government that mortgages the future of its citizens with nothing to show for it. CBN and NAS should grow a backbone. Ijoba Onibese. That's debtor government or debt, government.
All right. Great stuff. I love our listeners always ask the best questions. All right. MMT, I need to touch on that. Modern monetary theory, that's an American thing. So there's, her name is Stephanie something, some economist in America who has been saying that forget debt is an old-fashioned argument. Don't worry about debt. But the MMT argument it works for the United States because the US uses what? Dollars, and the US prints dollars. So that we don't print dollars. So that MMT argument doesn't really work for us. But the argument that what is the debt being used for? That's exactly what is arguing. SERAP is saying that President Buhari should tell everybody all that money you've gotten from the CBN, did you use it to pay salaries or did you use it for capital expenditure? Come out and tell us. This is sequel to their Freedom of Information Act request from the government. On the matter of oil and what it contributes to the economy, yes, oil contributes less than 10% to GDP, although it contributes 90% of FX earnings. That is what the oil you sell, the amount of dollars that come into Nigeria, 90% of that is from oil, and then about 60% of our income. So the thing is this, when you think about GDP contributions, GDP is the market value of goods and services in an economy. So it's more than just selling oil. GDP is economic contributions from manufacturing, from oil and gas, textiles, entertainment. We in broadcasting, what does oil do for us here? So that's the reason why if you think about what the FX earnings are, that's just raw dollar cash coming in. And so because we so lopsidedly depend on oil, that's why FX earnings, so much of that is from oil. But as far as GDP contributions, oil is not the entire GDP of Nigeria now. So many other things. 90% of Nigeria is more than 50% is a services economy. PIB needs to be harmonized. The host communities wanted 10% from oil profits, but and I know we've run out of time, 10% allocation. The House of Reps went for 2.5. I think the Senate passed 3%. And it needs to be harmonized. So they need to come together and harmonize that oil allocation for host communities before sending it to President Buhari for him to sign. And Shell also complained about the gas portion of the petroleum industry. They said that the fiscal structure, the gas portion of the PIB, disincentivizes investment. So there's still some things that need to be sorted out. It's been passed, but needs to be harmonized. So that story has not ended as far as the petroleum industry bill is concerned.
All right. Thank you very much, Rotus. We're out of time. Thanks to everyone who sent in comments even afterwards. Unfortunately, we can't take all of them. But please join us again tomorrow morning. Hopefully, we'll be able to delve in deeper into some of the things you've highlighted. Tomorrow, same time at 6:30 a.m. here on Smooth 98.1. Next up, we bring you today's edition of Freshly Pressed 981 after some great music, that is. So 7:30 a.m. join us here on Smooth 98.1. Thanks for listening.